Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Grace Hosking, for those I haven't met. I'm here today with Louisa Ferrier, Jess Bidstrup, and Alicia Galt from the BCG team. A big welcome to everyone tuning in, especially those joining us from the tractor or out in the paddock. We know it's a really busy time, so we really appreciate you taking 30 minutes out of your day to be part of this conversation. Now, today's webinar has been developed in response to the dry start we are experiencing. So the aim is really to provide a few practical tools and insights to help you make the best decision for your own business, be that staying the course, making adjustments, or considering a plan B. Now, before we get started, there's just a few quick housekeeping notes. So everyone's microphones should be muted automatically, but just please keep them like that until you're invited to speak. There'll be time for questions at the end, but if you've got questions throughout, just pop them in the chat box, which we'll be monitoring, or just pop your hand up and we'll invite you to take yourself off mute. We're also recording today's session, so that recording will be shared via BCG's communication channels for anyone who wants to catch up later or share it with others. Now, because this is a Q&A session, we really wanted to start by getting a sense of where everyone's at. So Jess will now share a quick poll in the chat, and please just take a moment to respond, even if it's just a quick little one-worder. It'll really help us to guide the discussion and really make sure we're staying relevant to what's happening out on the ground. Now, while you're doing that, I'll introduce you to our fabulous experts here with us today. We've really got the best in the business. So I'm delighted to introduce you to Andrew Fletcher and Kenton Porker from CSIRO. Now, CSIRO lead the GIDC-funded canola establishment project, which is really building a national picture of what drives success when it comes to establishing canola crops. We're also joined today by Nick Zorden from SMS Rural in Horsham, Matt Bissett from Exceed Ag in Swan Hill, and Craig Muir from AgriVision Swan Hill. Now, while you're all responding to that poll, Alicia's just going to provide a little bit of an overview of BCG's current work and some observations that we're taking.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yep. So BCG have been building on some research we did back in 2008 on seedling survival in marginal moisture. So the team has been investigating seedlings across the region, as you can see on the slide there, to determine how long the germinated seed can survive without follow-up rain and how this will affect establishment. So we've been taking observations at both Corio and Quambatook, and Quambatook received 45 mils on Anzac Day, and then Corio only 7 mils. So you can see the difference here. On the two slides there, Quambatook canola has both roots and shoots, whereas the Corio canola only has small roots developing. And further assessments have been carried out this week. As you can see, the Quambatook canola has, we would call that maybe the two-leaf stage, which you could possibly say is fully emerged. From the Corio one, we have seen a reduction in the roots of the seed giant, and we are finding a lot of kind of seed shells, which I'm not too sure if that means that it's kind of dying off or what's going on there, but the seeds that we have found are still viable. We've planted them in perfect conditions and they are still kind of coming up. And to expand on this, we have, as of yesterday, started watering at Corio. So we've done simulated rainfall of 5 and 10 mils, and we'll continue to add plots throughout the season just to see if they do come up and how establishment is affected as we go on. So I think Lou's going to give us a summary of what we are seeing in the poll.
Thanks, Alicia. So thank you to everyone who's responded to the poll so quickly. For people who've finished sowing their canola, 69% have finished, so 31 have not yet. What were the soil conditions at sowing? 62% sowed into completely dry soil, 23% sowed into marginal moisture, and then some were caught rainfall during or shortly after sowing, so 15%. If moisture was present at sowing, what's the situation right now? Well, no one's saying it's still holding moisture well. 23% say it's starting to dry out, and 77% say it's already drying out. What's happening with crop emergence? There's patchy emergence for 43% of you, and for 57%, there's very little or no emergence yet. Finally, did you sow an OP or a hybrid variety? 7% sowed OP, open pollinated, and 93% sowed hybrid. So that's a great picture of what's happening across the region. Before we go to Kenton and Andrew, I was wondering if Nick, Matt and Craig would be happy to briefly provide an overview of what they're seeing, of the stats that I've read out. Is that what you're seeing? Nick, could we go to you first, please?
Yeah, something like that, I guess. I guess the whole idea today, my main concern is the guys that have got canola sown into dry soil, like everyone, but then only got that small rainfall event. But none of my clients got a big rain event, so we're all sitting on that sort of 12 mil, sort of 8 to 12 mil rain event. So a lot of it's germinated, but it's really struggling now, and that's where most of my guys are at. And we're 100% hybrid seed, to answer that part of the question.
Thank you, Nick. Matt?
Yeah, we've got a bit of a mix. So my client base, we've got a group of clients that bought Group Sea Lake, Group Woomera, Group Hopetoun, and we've had a massive range of rainfalls across that. So down in the Bort area, we've got no concerns down here. We've had close to 60 million spots, and things are flying. But different story the further west we go. So west of the Calder Highway, it really peters out. There was only anywhere from sort of 9 to 15 mil through from sort of west of the Calder Highway out to Hopetoun. And yeah, it varied in amongst that as well. So the disappointing part in it all is we've got canola that's established on that, that 10 to 15 mil, and it's as good of establishment plant numbers as you'd ever see, but it is really feeling the pinch now. It's still hanging in there, but another fortnight of this weather, I'm not sure where that's going to end. To a point where we have other paddocks where we only had sort of sub 10 mil, and they're in a lot of trouble now. Yeah, they're really, really feeling the pinch. They've sort of come up, emerged the cotyledons, and they haven't really progressed any further. They're just sitting there and yeah, really, really thirsty. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. Where it ends is anyone's guess at the moment, but yeah, we'll hang in there, I suppose.
Certainly is. Thanks, Matt, for that overview. And finally, Craig, you've got some further insights.
Yeah, I'm probably similar to the others, particularly Matt, sort of in my footprint as well. Yeah, canola certainly in that northern Mallee zone. Yeah, the northwest of the state, where anywhere from 2 to 8 mils we received. On the sandier soils, definitely came up and it's established there, but on the heavier flats is it's germinated under the ground, but yeah, I'm not too sure. Yeah, similar to Matt, not too sure where it's going to end up. I'm not overly confident on it. But then, yeah, as we get closer to Swan Hill and back through that Quambatook region, yeah, they've had a solid start through there. So any canola is up and away and progressing as per normal in those zones, and then down to Western Nullawall. Yeah, again, that's the Calder Highway, Charlton, and back towards Donald there, where east of Charlton you've got reasonably good establishment. Numbers are up, but they're starting to struggle a bit now with conditions drying out. And then west of the town you've got varying cotyledon canola. The numbers are good, similar to what Matt was saying, but they are a bit blue at the moment, not liking life. And then you don't have to go too far west of that, closer to Donald, and yeah, there is stuff there that only got that 3 or 4 mils of rain and may have shot a radical out, and not too sure where it's going to end up.
Thank you for that overview as well, Craig. So Andrew and Kenton, with what you've heard and seen, and we've discussed this yesterday too, how can our growers in this region manage their paddocks going forward? I know you've got some resources there, Kenton, to share. Would you like us to bring them up, or have you got some thoughts about what we can do now, and what do we think about moving forward?
Yeah, I guess it's really the context is important. So one of the things I think, like we had a late break last year, but we had a late break last year with stored solid water. So that's what gave us a lot of confidence. And now I'm not sure. Maybe it's useful to open it up. I think Victoria at least has some stored solid water, unlike South Australia in parts of the landscape. So yeah, it's difficult discussion. So you've got sounds like we've either got dry sowing, that seed that's sitting there that hasn't emerged, and then there's stuff in between and crops that are already emerged. So I think that with the crops that are already emerged, that might be an easier decision. We know that based on most of our work and all the time of sowing work, all the time of establishment work that we've done in canola, really establishment timing is the most important thing for grain yield, provided we've got, I would say, more than 5 to 10 plants per metre squared. Generally, establishment timing trumps density, but in the last few years, we've had good stored water under those scenarios. There's a little bit of unknown there, but I guess what I'm trying to say is if you've got more than 5 to 10 plants per metre squared established now, I think you're in a pretty good space, and canola is pretty tough. It'll hang on through these hopefully cooler days as we go into May, but I think it's the one that's hard to get answers on, and we're trying to, maybe I'll throw to Andrew in a minute, is that seeds that have partially germinated sitting there, we don't necessarily, to recreate those conditions, we don't necessarily always know the conditions in which we cook a canola seed, if you like, or wreck that canola seed. We know the longer it goes, so we did it from the 1st of March last year. We did manage to get some damage, but we still got 20 plants established when the rain came in June. So there will be some seeds that haven't germinated. There will be some seeds that survive. So my only advice is that, you can check. You could take a drum of water, 10 litre, 20 litre drum of water, and put it on a metre squared, and that's 10, 20 mils of water, and you can actually see whether, in 7 to 10 days' time, whether you've got a serious problem or not.
Maybe I'll jump in. Kenton, yeah.
Yes,
No, I thought you did really well. Good description. Now, sorry, I heard a lot of geography before, which I'm not familiar with, coming from Western Australia, but I think I sort of got hold of what you were talking about. Yeah, like Kenton says, I think the issue is not so much around stuff that's in dry, and we're pretty confident that it hasn't had enough rain to germinate and get going yet. I mean, that's probably still okay. The stuff, well, I saw the photos you showed me from Quambratop, those little plants, I think those should be all right. They've probably got roots down quite deep. It's those ones in the middle that are kind of the biggest concern. But I think at this point, there's possibly not a whole heap we can do. We've kind of almost committed to that canola. And I mean, a lot of the evidence I've seen, should we resow? Often resowing does more damage than help. And if you'd be resowing it now anyhow, you'd be resowing it to the same conditions. So I feel like from a management perspective, possibly we've sort of made our decisions, and we've got to follow it through and see what happens. There's probably some stuff we can do later on. But yeah, in terms of a break, I mean, I know there's no stored soil moisture, but when you look at the historical break, we're in the middle of May. So seed that's already sown dry, if at some point you do get a rainfall, it's actually still not in a bad condition. And yeah, my experiences with canola has been when I look at it, I often talk myself into it's all going to be terrible and I haven't got enough plants, but it's actually quite a resilient little plant if it can survive that dry period. And we've been doing a little bit of work in the lab here, trying to understand when we put seed into soil that we think is dry. So even if there's a little bit of water, that's not enough to germinate the seed does actually take up water. The uptake of water by seed is actually a physical process. So if you put seed into really marginal moisture, not enough to germinate, it will take up water and it will go into becoming a little bit more susceptible to high temperatures and seed degradation. So it's a bit like storing seed in a silo really poorly. If you put seed into a silo at high moisture content, it's going to deteriorate pretty quick. Some of that might be playing out in the soil at the moment. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, just to that, we've got a question in the chat from Kelly Angel saying, you say seeds are tough, but what is your definition of tough? How long do they survive, or have you seen them survive?
So up until last year, I would have said I've never seen them really not survive in dry soil in Western Australia here. So when we put them in dry soil, like 2 years ago, we had it sit in dry soil for like 2 months. And then when the rain came, it just popped up and went for it. However, last year in a couple of situations, so around Merredin, we had some March rainfall, which is kind of rare, but we didn't start sowing kind of till early April. And by that point, you would have said the soil is dry. But if you look at those seeds, we didn't get any more rainfall after that until like June. And if you look at those seeds, there was clearly a lot of seeds had died and were not very vigorous. So if we had a little bit of, so stored water is good, but in that situation, a little bit of stored soil water was not helpful. So I guess that's a decision for earlier in the season, I think.
Thanks, Andrew. I've noted another question in the chat, but we also were submitted one prior to this webinar, and it's about the decision to resow or not. So juggling slow staggered establishment of canola on creek country, and if to resow or not, taking into consideration frosts ahead, how late is too late to resow, and also how much will it cost versus maybe oversowing a late vetch.
So do you mind if I throw up a slide that I found last night that might be quite helpful on this? So this is from a colleague here in Western Australia. So Chloe. So Chloe was a student at UWA, and she was looking at resowing of canola. So what she did is set up some experiments where she sowed canola at 5, 10, 15, 20, and 40 plants per square metre. And then those ones that she put at 5, she then later, about 6 weeks later, she went and oversowed them with an OP canola. And you can see that actually in terms of yield, so I don't know why she elected to do kilograms per metre squared, but that's 4 tonnes, 3 tonnes, 2 tonnes. So she was a lot better off just leaving the 5 plants per square metre as they were, rather than dragging a seeder through and trying to resow with an OP to get the plant numbers back up, and the same at 10. So obviously this is a little different because this was contrived to be low plant numbers, so it was actually an okay season. But I just think that at this point you would possibly be making things worse by dragging a seeder through, especially when those existing plants don't have any roots down. Now, I reckon the issue would be what happens if you've got absolutely no plants. Well, then you might have to start thinking about it. But you don't have to have very high plant numbers to almost make it worthwhile persisting, is my take on it. And I'd be interested to know what the agros on the line would say about that.
It'd be good to get some thoughts from the agros of how much stored water we think we're sitting on, because I'm comfortable if you've got 5 or 10 plants by the end of May, for example. And what we often try and think about is, we'll think ahead to when your first flower might be coming up. Our idea is to get as much growth during that period. So ideally we'd be trying to close our canopy by the first flower, and 5 to 10 plants per metre squared can do that. But if Matt's saying like you're starting to struggle, and that early saying canola hasn't got into deep stored water, we are relying on winter rainfall to effectively grow that crop. And I guess the thing about sowing later or emerging later, we just have to accept that our yield potentials will be less. Like the big advantage of growing canola is sowing it early and getting it into deep stored water. Like that is well established. And as it is with cereals as well, we start declining in yield after the 1st of May, probably in canola, and probably the 15th of May in wheat. So it is a little bit about managing expectation that, yield potentials are now declining, but there's still good yield on offer if we get established crop and, can get the growth during June, July, to get some biomass, because biomass is what's really driving yield in canola.
So I totally agree with you, Ken. I might add one little pessimistic comment that yield's declining, but if we look at it already, there's no stored soil moisture and you haven't had any rain, you're probably not in a decile 10 year, even the best possible spring. You're already into probably a pretty poor year, so managing expectations is important. So I guess it's around minimizing losses at this point, isn't it? It's around just trying to get the best yield that you can with what you've got.
Thank you. Matt or Craig or Nick, do you have any insights about stored moisture and where it's at?
Yeah, so the challenge we've got at the moment is we've got stored water, but all of our deep end testing sort of indicated that that's at, 30 centimetres and below. So we've got this dry band, and that's the challenge at the moment is we've got nothing to grow into other than those areas that had that couple of inches. So, yeah, I mean, the issue is if we snag another 5 or 10 mil of rain, at the end of the month, what's that do for us? It, keeps us ticking along for another couple of weeks. We still have that issue of no stored water in that band to grow through because we've got nothing met up. So, yeah, that's probably where that's at.
Craig or Nick? Well, then there's another question here from Tim Reethus. Will the seed treatment wear off by the time it germinates? Do we need to be careful of pests, or is it too cold?
Well, seed treatment's a bit like canola seed. It's moisture activated. So if it's sitting in dry soil, it'll probably be okay in a dry, cold fridge. And pests love canola at any time of the year. So I don't think, yes, pests would still be a problem even as we go into winter, and particularly as it's colder. The slower germination or the slower emergence it does give pests more time. So I would imagine that'd still be an issue like they always are, probably always are in the Wimmera, Tim. So
yeah, I'd add to that too, Kenton, that I wouldn't be too concerned about seed treatments. They're not going to go anywhere in dry soil. In terms of pests, though, we're already seeing bryobia might fire up again. Not so much in canola because all of that sort of had a bare earth on it, but certainly seeing in pulse crops bryobia in some cases giving them an absolute hiding. We've already had to treat a couple of paddocks, so yeah, be something to be very mindful of.
Good. Nick is providing some commentary in the chat as well, echoing the sentiments that we're discussing as well. So thank you for that, Justin. Look, I'm mindful we've got 5 more minutes of the allocated time. I'm happy to keep questions going if anyone has any. But I think at the moment, some of the take-home messages are that 5 plants or more in the ground at the moment is worth more than more in the future, or not worth dragging the seeder through for a second time. Putting some water out now to check emergence. Our team have been doing that as part of the seedling management research we're doing, and we're going to put out a video soon to show how we're doing that. So I don't know if Kenton, you've got some more comments about that.
Sorry, I missed that. I was reading the messages and
That's all right. Putting the drum of water out to check your emergence. That's something people could go out and do this week.
Yeah, if you've got a known area, I'd be doing it straight away.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to work it out, but is 10 litres on a metre square 10 mils? I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, 1 litre on 1 square metre is a millimetre. So yeah, 10 litre drum on a square metre. 20
litre water container on a metre squared would be 20 mils. So you could, and it's pretty warm. Soils are still pretty warm, so you should you should be able to get some good germination within 7 to 10
If it's
days.
going to germinate, you'll see it 3 or 4 days, I reckon, Kenton. You should be able to see it.
And there's nothing on the forecast, so why not? I think like another thing is you can learn from seasons like this as well. Like last year, if you even look back or even on an NDVI map and go and look at some of the soil types that did establish across your farm on really low amounts of water, that they're the parts that you can have confidence in seasons to come in terms of dry sowing, or if you are going to go in early with canola, you can go and look where it has reliably established on marginal conditions. So I'm sure some flats could be a complete failure in some circumstances, but it'd be useful, I don't know, for the consultants, whether they've seen any complete failures yet. I'm not sure what we're calling a failure, if 5 plants per metre squared is enough.
Yeah, like that's my biggest worry, Kenton, is these crops that have emerged, the wind blown last 2 weeks ago, Monday, or have got, say, 10 plants now, but are they going to survive till it does rain? Are they starting to? I've got stuff starting to die now. So it's, even if we water it up, like, yeah, it'd be good to know what's going to come. But what we've got now is, I don't know if it's going to survive. The other thing we've got to think about is what kind of ground if we're going to re-sow, what herbicides have we got out there in terms of residuals? Like, we can't go back with everything we want to either. We've got, different preams out there already. And then what soil type you're on. If people are on some hard ground with, like, I've got no water on a lot of my crops now. I just don't know if it's going to be too late for canola re-sowing anyway. But yeah, some really difficult decisions. If the small little seedlings now die, I just can't see how some of these paddocks are going to, even if it does come later, like, I don't know.
That does sound like a different scenario. That's sort of moving from establishment to terminal drought, isn't it? Like, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was going to add, sorry, Alicia, I was going to add, I have had crops, and again, granted it was last year with stored moisture, where, I've got away with 3 plants a square metre before, so that low plant number, I sort of say a minimum of 5, but yeah, I have got away with less than that before. You essentially got to treat it the same as you would a normal canola crop, because you can still turn 3 plants into a big crop. Like, if you've got stored moisture in the season, works in your favour. But that's the unknown here. Particularly, the unknown is the season, but the stored water situation, we've got a bit of a gauge on that anyway. So, Northern Mallee. It's actually surprising. The Northern Mallee actually has reasonable amount of stored moisture, and what Bisso was saying before, under that 30 centimetres, that's about where the line is, 30, 35 centimetres. But as you progress further south, down past, or down into the Wimmera, where you've got, you're only down in that 50% stored moisture or less. So, it's a difficult situation depending on where you are.
Thank you. And I think that question answers or goes to the post from both Tim Reethus and Fiona. What is the fallback? What do we re-sow? Is it vetch or lentils? Do any of the agros have any thoughts about what we can do moving forward?
Yeah, I think Nick summed it up pretty well. I mean, it's going to come down to, I guess, what herbicide, pre-emergent programs and whatnot you've got out there. And, in a lot of cases when we're growing canola, we're loading up. So propyzamide will be a concern. Atrazine will be a concern. So they're going to be considerations. To get around that, you're going to have to take risks if you need to, but not that I'm advocating to take risks, but that's, in some cases, will be the only way around it. I guess the message to my clients at the moment is don't panic. Right at this second, we can't do anything. To go and re-sow in a situation like right now, when we're achieving nothing, basically. We're going into the same conditions as it was mentioned before. My view is see what the rain does, when it comes, see how the crop responds, and then make a decision from there. That's basically all we can do at this stage. So As you said, in terms of crop selection, yeah, where we've got Overwatch out, we've probably got the opportunity to go back into a cereal provider. We've got no other residuals there. If we've got some propizamide out, we might be able to swing back into a pulse. Where we've got atrazine out, it's probably the big worry at the moment, how we manage that, because, yeah, we really haven't got any other way around that other than canola or taking, yeah, pretty extensive risks putting a cereal back on it. So, yeah, they're things to think about anyway.
Thank you, Matt. And then one final question about, so if we do have patchy emergence, so 5 plants per square metre, and we do get some rain and we keep going with the canola crop, how do we manage that? Should we be backing off on nitrogen or going full steam ahead? And even thinking about, is there considerations with perhaps windrowing with the patchy emergence? Any thoughts about planning ahead? Andrew or Kenton?
Oh, not my area of expertise, but I mean, I certainly wouldn't be putting nitrogen on now, but you would be applying nitrogen based on your, when the rain comes, fingers crossed, you'd be applying it based on what you think your yield potential is, which is going to be sort of related to when that rain comes, how much rain comes, and maybe adjusting it a little bit for plant numbers. So you might want to back off a little bit, but I think you've still got to feed it if you're trying to get a yield. For me, I think a bigger concern is around how you control weeds in those patchy crops. And I think probably the aggros would be a better place to say that. You're probably just going to have to be onto it, because you've got these big open gaps that weeds will be able to invade and grow quite well in. Yeah.
I think my learnings last year, we've had small plant numbers, is just you have to look at the crops a lot more. You've got less plants to muck around with. If you lose any more, you're in big trouble. So if you're going to stick with the program down to such a low plant population, you've got to go. I think you still got to manage your nitrogen with your water, but also, yeah, manage your pests really tightly, because there's no room for error after that.
Thank you, Nick and Andrew. One final question before we make some final comments. How blue and shriveled can a 2-leaf canola plant get before it is dead? No rain forecast for 16 days. Don't want to miss an opportunity to get resown canola up in the next decent rain.
Fairly blue and shriveled, but that's a terrible answer. You can get a wet paper towel, put it on that, and overnight you often see it reshoot in the morning. That's one way of checking a very shriveled plant, but yeah, it sounds like if 16 days time, you might have a better answer.
That's what I was going to say. You'll know more in 16 days. So yeah, judge it then.
Yeah.
In general, it's like what my comments are. If I can make a comment there, it's when you've got temperatures like you've got this season, you're looking at somewhere between 7 to 14 days if the plant's already blue and starting to shrivel and your root system's heating up, so your soil underneath is dry. In other seasons, it can last 12 to 15 days or even longer in those dry conditions and then respond to rain.
Okay, thank you, Justin. So any final comments from our presenters or agros before we bring this webinar to a close?
No, I think, yeah, it's quite an interesting challenge you've got there. Yeah, but yeah, I'm happy to take phone calls from anyone. I'm assuming Kenton will talk to people as well. That's part of our job in these projects, is to talk to people. I don't think we have any magic solutions right away. We can't make it rain, but yeah, I'd say just sit tight and see what happens. And yeah, when it does rain.
Yeah. Thanks. Same. Thanks for having us online. And it's the hard questions. I think it sounds like the big question will be how big that rain is, and the unknown is that wetting front. Like
Now, it looks like we've just had one final question come through, and maybe it's a good way to finish. Do any of you have any comments on cereal seed survival? We've talked a lot about canola.
Well, cereals will survive a lot better than canola, just simply because they are the makeup of their seed. They're much bigger. They've got a lot more reserves in them. And they've also got this ability a little bit to sort of start putting a shoot out and then stop, which is not as common. Canola doesn't do it as well. So cereals will do better, but how much better, I don't know. Have you had any experience with that, Kenton?
No, but a cereal plant will stay alive longer. Like you can basically have a brown paddock and can't see any cereal, and the little crown is still green just under the soil surface. It'll sit there like it sits in a fridge in the snow for a long time. So it'll be it is tough compared to canola. Tougher.
Thanks, Kenton and Andrew. Now that kind of brings us to the close of our webinar. So thank you, Andrew, Kenton, Nick, Matt, and Craig for your time. Now, if anyone's looking for more regionally relevant agronomy updates, don't forget to check out BCG's technical bulletin. So it's our fortnightly growing season update, which is available exclusively to members. So you'll find seasonal observations, you'll find trial insights, and then more agronomist commentary tailored to the current conditions we experience. So if you're not already a member, you can sign up today by calling the office or via our website. Now, this webinar has been made possible with the funding from the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund and the GRDC Canola Establishment Project. Today's webinar has been recorded and it'll be available on our website, so please keep an eye out on BCG's various communication channels for more information. Now, thanks again and all the best for the remainder of your cropping program.
Thanks, team. Thank you, everyone.
Are we still